Welcome to The Explainer, where we take these huge, complicated topics and, well, we break them down into simple, visual explainers, just like this one.
All right, today we are diving deep into the startup playbook. We've literally sifted through hours and hours of wisdom from the absolute best founders in Silicon Valley to find the most critical and often the most counterintuitive lessons for building a company that actually lasts.
So what is the secret? Well, it all kicks off with this one big idea. Startups play by a totally different set of rules. Seriously, a lot of the common sense that helps you in your day-to-day life, it can be the absolute wrong thing to do here. So let's get into it. Okay, part one. So here's the thing. The startup journey, it almost never starts with that classic aha moment, that lightning bolt of an idea. Nope. It starts with the right people and a really different way of looking for problems. And this brings us to our very first counterintuitive rule. And it's a big one, from Paul Graham of Y Combinator. He says the way to get startup ideas is not to try to think of startup ideas. It sounds weird, right? But what he means is the best ones aren't forced. They come from solving a problem that you genuinely have. When it's your own itch you're scratching, you've got this authentic insight that nobody else can touch. Okay, so you've got an idea. Now what? The team. The team is everything. I love this analogy from Airbnb's Brian Chesky. The founders are the parents, and the company is their child. If that relationship at the top is dysfunctional, that dysfunction is going to seep into the entire culture. It's the company's DNA. And when you do start hiring, man, those first few people are so critical. They're setting the blueprint for your entire culture. Sam Altman just boils it all down to these three questions. It's not about some fancy resume. It's about, are they smart? Can they get stuff done? And honestly, do I actually want to spend a ton of time with this person? And this is exactly why you have to be so slow and deliberate at the beginning. I mean, get this. Airbnb spent 5 months, interviewing their very first employee. It sounds insane, but they knew that just one mediocre person in that first handful of hires could literally kill the company. All right, part two. You've got your core team. Now what? You got to find your first users. And the secret here is, you guessed it, another counterintuitive one. You have to start by doing things that feel completely, totally unsustainable. Just look at the first version of DoorDash. This was their minimum viable product, their MVP. There was no fancy app, no big fleet of drivers. It was literally just a web page with some PDF menus from local restaurants. An order comes in over the phone, and the founders themselves would hop in a car, go buy the food, and deliver it. And that story just perfectly captures this idea, right? You don't need some polished, perfect, automated machine to get started. You just need to prove one thing. Do people want this? And even in its most janky, manual, broken form, the answer for DoorDash was a clear yes. And see, that's the magic of doing unscalable things. That hands-on manual process, that's your best source of feedback. Yeah, it's painful. It sucks to hear everything that's wrong with your baby. But you have to feel your users' pain to really truly solve their problems. That direct line is your superpower. Okay, so let's recap. You've got an idea, a team, your first users are trickling in. As you start to grow, your focus has to shift to the thing that holds it all together, and that's your company culture. Brian Chesky from Airbnb is, let's just say he's really blunt about this. He says culture is a long-term play. He was asked what his advice would be if you just wanted to build a company and sell it in a year. His answer? Completely fuck up the culture. Just hire anybody. Move as fast as possible. Don't worry about it. But if you want to build something that lasts, every single one of those decisions has to be slow, careful, and deliberate. And, that culture shows up most clearly in the absolute hardest moments. Ben Horowitz says that how you treat people, especially when you have to let them go, that defines the character of your company for everyone who's left. It's about dignity. It's about respect, even when it's tough. All right, so your culture is strong. How do you win? Well, this is where investor Peter Thiel comes in with a pretty controversial take. He says the goal of a startup isn't to compete. The goal is to build a monopoly. So Thiel's whole argument is that there are really only two kinds of businesses, monopolies and cutthroat competitors. And here's the crazy part. Both of them lie about it. A monopoly like Google, they'll say, oh no, we're just a small fish in the huge tech industry pond. They do that to avoid regulators. But then you have a struggling business, like a restaurant, and they'll invent this super tiny niche. We're the only British restaurant in Palo Alto, just to pretend they're unique. And all of this leads to Thiel's main point. Competition is for losers. The way you win is by escaping competition entirely. You do that by starting with a market that is so small that you can completely own it. Think about Facebook. It started at just one college. Once you dominate that little pond, then you expand outward from a position of total strength.
Okay, part 5. A brilliant monopoly strategy is, well, it's pretty useless if you can't actually execute. So this last piece of the playbook is all about the daily grind. How do you operate? How do you maximize what your team can do?
I love this metaphor from Keith Rabois, who's a master operator. He says you have two kinds of people, ammunition and barrels. Most people are ammunition. They're great, but you have to aim them. But then you have these rare people who are barrels. You can give them a fuzzy, conceptual idea, and they will just run with it and ship it perfectly. The key insight here is that your company's output isn't about headcount. It's about how many barrels you have. And so, as a founder, your job has to change over time. You have to stop being the writer, the one doing all the work. You have to become the editor. Your new job is to simplify things, to ask clarifying questions, and, most importantly, to aim those precious barrels you have at the biggest opportunities.
And all of this really boils down to one single prime directive. Always keep momentum. For a software company, that means you just keep growing. For a hardware company, it means you never, ever let that ship date slip. Because momentum, it's more than just a number on a chart, it's a feeling. A winning team feels like they can't lose, and that feeling is the fuel that will get you through all the tough times that are definitely coming.
So, there you have it. That's the playbook. Find a real problem that you yourself have. Build an absolutely incredible team. Do the things that don't scale. Protect your culture like it's everything. Aim for monopoly, and never, ever lose momentum. You know, the principles are actually pretty simple to understand, but they are incredibly hard to do. The playbook is written, so the only question left is, what will you build?